Thank you, and we're going to dive now into second panel. We'll be talking about optimizing agri-food production for climate, nature, and people. And we'll be talking particularly about the efficient use of resources, water and energy, and how do we help farmers to optimize the use of these resources, and to talk about the role of innovation as well. So it's my great pleasure to invite the panelist, Jamie Burrows, to join me here in the platform, who's the founder and CEO of Vertical Future, Petra Laux, Head of Crops Protection Business and Sustainability, Syngenta Group, Will Warshauer, CEO and President of TechnoServe, Richard Zaltzman, who's Chief Impact Officer of EIT Food, and Sue McCluskey, Special Representative for Agriculture in Australia. So thank you everyone for joining the panel. So we'll have about 35 minutes, and I will go through the panelists asking each one a question, and they will take around 3 minutes to answer the question. And I'd like to come back to you, the audience, if you have a question, a comment you want to make. So please feel free to raise your hand. There will be a mic. It will be great to have you join our conversation as well. And then after that, I'll come back to the panel for another round of questions. And we have a question at the end where you're invited to vote, and then we'll finish with that. And each panelist can give their reaction on that question, and we'll finish with that. So please feel free to join us. I promise I'll come back to you, and if you have any questions or comment to make, the briefer you are, the better, so we can get more people to speak. So let me start with Richard first, and to talk particularly about the water use. And if you could please tell us a little bit about the main challenges that are facing farmers and the agri-food systems regarding the use of water.
Yeah, thank you, Zitouni. So, first of all, it's really important for us to understand water and food are inextricably linked, especially at a farmer level. And last year at COP, I heard someone say, there's no food security without water security. And for me, that was a really powerful statement and encapsulates the problem. In terms of innovation for water use, what can we do differently? Let's move into the action zone. What can we do differently? There's innovation in the field. We all love a bit of technology. There's some great technology coming into the field. Precision agriculture is bringing a real ability to reduce water use in the field for farmers. It is expensive, and I think that the innovation area there is to work out how do you do that on a global scale, not just in a Northern Europe, Western Europe that can afford smart stuff in the field. But we believe precision has got a long way to go to simplify and come down the value chain, and we'll invest in that innovation. Conservation, really important. There's no point wasting it. If it's going down the drain, it's going down the drain. So again, there's a lot of innovation to be done in conservation, but also in societal practice around conservation. I think there's when we look at farming practice, there's a lot that is done because it's always been done, and there is innovation to be had in the social engagement and the educational engagement around use of water. And thirdly, management and markets. We had an amazing farm visit yesterday out into the desert, and a conversation about the aquifers. There's virtually no innovation happening yet in public goods around water like aquifer management. So we'd love to see innovation if we treat water as a market, but not necessarily driving what has always gone before. Again, we think there are many different ways we could do this. So at the field, a lot we can do. We need to innovate across the value chain as well. We need real credibility when it comes to water use, connecting practice to product. So in order for us to really understand what is creating water stress, we have to know what practices lead to what water footprint for a given product. And so that you can then make trade-offs as an organization. You can invest in your value chain where you can have the greatest impact. And thirdly, innovation at the systemic level. We feel it's really important to have an holistic framework of environmental impact indicators. So you're not making trade-offs between, say, carbon and water, which could be really damaging on either agenda, or indeed biodiversity or societal impacts, etc. So those three areas for us are a nice innovation pyramid from the field through the value chain to the system level.
Great, thank you. And Jamie, in terms of all the solutions that we're looking at to meet the climate goals and the sustainability issues on the use of water, so do you think that the technologies are moving fast enough to reach this goal?
Well, first, thanks very much for the invitation. Good to see everybody today. Is technology moving fast enough? I think we've already mentioned broader technologies relating to broadacre farming. I can speak specifically to controlled environment agriculture and more specifically vertical farming. I would say technology has come along a long way in the past 5 to 10 years in this area. I think the issue has been the speed of adoption of this technology. So vertical farming technologies, for example, can be low-tech, they can be high-tech, and the type of technologies that are deployed is very much geography dependent. I think where we're really missing out is the type of capital that's going into this sector, and that's obviously affecting the rate of adoption or the speed of adoption for these technologies. Vertical farming itself has, and high-tech greenhouses has the ability to obviously solve a lot of issues around food security and water, and I fully agree with the comment that you can't speak about food without speaking about water for sure. But again, I think we're significantly behind where we should be. There's a lot of talk, there's not a lot of action. I think there's been a misalignment in terms of the type of capital that's come into this market over the past 10 years. A lot of venture capital and private equity funds that have unreasonable expectations in terms of returns and aren't willing to trade that off with the more grandiose, more important goals relating to ESG. And then just a final point, I think there's been a lot of progress made in specific crop groups, so leafy greens, tomatoes, strawberries, and a lot of this has been sold at a price premium. I think true food security exists when we're talking about price parity and when we're looking at the population as a whole. And I think that vertical farming has been very guilty, especially in the US market and globally, of addressing higher income parts of society. I think where we need to move to is grains. Almost 50% of our energy effectively in the human body comes from grains, and we're quite a long way away from getting there with respect to controlled environment agriculture. So I do think more progress needs to be made there, but it's going to be a bit of a slow burner.
Great, thank you. And Petra, in terms of innovation, how are we doing? What are the main areas of innovation?
There's innovation that is close and there's innovation that is further out. But let's first recall what is the job we need to get done. So the job we need to get done is to enable farmers to produce more on the existing agricultural land, to reduce emissions on farm, and to store more carbon in soil. To enable this, what we have in reach is actually biotechnology and seeds. We are breeding, we are using biotechnology, gene editing to bring seeds to market that can live with less nutrients, can withstand a drought. So there is a lot of potential in improving seeds, as well as we are well advanced in biological, which harness the power of nature, and this is to protect crops against biotic and abiotic stress. The other area of innovation, which is enhance, I would say, like any other sector, also agriculture can benefit from digitization. In every sector we have seen know-how, digital AI, improve decisions, and this is what the farmer needs. Weather forecasts, information on soil health, which seed is the best in which environment, when to spray, what to spray, how to have the least impact. So this is a massive area of innovation, not only to help decisions, but also to capture information. If we think about biodiversity, for example, it's very tedious to go out and count insects. Digital allows us, we are working on a biodiversity sensor to optimize the capturing of which insects are around and how do they prosper. Then the last one is actually close to our heart. And this is soil health. Soil is the basis for agriculture. We have achieved soil scientists because we want to understand even better how the biome and the soil interacts with crops, and we are so far that we understand how crops speak with the microbiome, and we even consider roots, meanwhile, part of the soil microbiome. So we know a lot about regenerative practices that help improve soil health. We want to understand better how we can foster that process, measure progress. And finally, we also need systems, we talked about pharma, to enable farmers to get benefits from improving carbon storage and improvements in soil health.
Great, thank you. And Will, for smallholder farmers and small and medium enterprises, what is their role in, particularly from the global south, in this transformation of agri-food systems and improved production?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's been a great day for me. It's not every day in my life that the day starts with Ban Ki-moon talking about the importance of smallholder farmers. And then it's not every time I'm on stage that I'm following two farmers on stage. So credit to Climate Action for having the farmers here and their voices heard directly. I'm used to trying to represent them, but credit to Climate Action. We can't have a transition to regenerative agriculture without bringing the smallholders along. There are an estimated 600 million smallholder farmers, and depending on whose numbers you believe, they're producing about 30% or so of all the food eaten on Earth. So we can't do it without bringing them along. They are very vulnerable to climate change and have the fewest tools in their toolbox to respond to it. And so as some of the prior panelists said, I think we need to make sure and keep firmly in the center of our mind the incomes of smallholder farmers. There is no good solution that is sustainable and scalable that doesn't support the incomes of smallholder farmers in all of this. And I'll give one quick example to take us down from the 50,000-foot level we normally are at a COP of an Ethiopian coffee farmer by the name of Hailu, who TechnoServe worked with, whose trees were very old and were not producing much. And there is a technique to rejuvenate the trees, but the problem is it stops production for 3 years. You cut them off right near the ground. Nice. And so smallholder farmers don't have the luxury of being able to go without that income, even if it's quite small, for 3 years. Working with him, our team landed on a scheme to plant beans in between the stumps of the trees while they regenerated. He was able to continue to have the income he would have had from his old trees at that point from the beans. His new trees are bearing now 3 times what they used to bear. He's stumped 700 of them, and he's now moving on to his final 1,500 of doing it. And this is good for the income, but it's also critical for climate because we don't need any additional land then. He is rejuvenating his trees. He's growing more and earning more on the same plot of land. So there's an intensification that's essential for this as well.
Oh, great, thank you. And before I bring in the next speaker, as I said, after that, I'd like to come back to the audience and please share with us your thoughts and any question you may have. Thank you for that. Sue, if you could please share with us the experience in Australia, and particularly on the use on science and evidence in helping farmers with this overall agenda.
Thank you, Zitouni, and thank you for the pleasure to be here today. In Australia, and I will pick up on the earlier comment around soil and soil health and evidence and science. Australia is the driest continent in the world, and we have the oldest soils. In fact, even though we're a vast country, only 6% of it is arable. And so there are 3 strategies we're actually looking at around this. But the first one is really around our research and development corporations model. And it's an innovative model because it is a co-investment model between industry and government. We have industry levies that are matched with government dollars that invest in research, development, and importantly, capacity building. Because of course, farmers learn from other farmers, and it's important that we get research that's taken up on the ground. But very importantly, this actually provides the evidence and science behind the research that is done to make sure that we can demonstrate our climate-smart agriculture, our claims to sustainability, our sustainability credentials, but to make sure that we actually can prove what we're doing and get benchmarks in terms of how we can improve. And for farmers on the ground, this means that they have the ability to be able to say, what practices do I need to change to make a difference? And how does this then contribute to really how we can actually innovate and use more technology to be able to do that? And just coming back to that soil point, you know, in Australia, water is critically important for us. We don't have much water. But for soils, we say if you have healthy soils, you have healthy plants and animals, you have healthy people and a healthy environment.
Oh, great, thank you, and thank you for sharing that experience. So are there any questions or any points anyone would like? Is it gentleman here? Can we have the mic, please? Is the mic at the back? Just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, namaste. Myself Ram Saran from Nepal. I'm representing Muktinath Krishi Company Limited. That Krishi means agriculture in Nepal. So my question is to Syngenta Group, Petra. Yeah, how Syngenta Group is like doing nature and people-based business for the sustainability. So how we can take back to the Nepal from the experience of Syngenta Group? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's take another question there. Okay.
Hi, Sajeev from Fair Initiative. We are an investor network focused on ESG issues in the animal protein sector. My question is, I mean, we spoke about sustainable initiatives of a lot of these companies, but how can some of these nature-based solutions be combined with the consumer side changes? Can we have these nature-based solutions and then feed the population, or do we also need like a whole value chain change?
Okay, thank you. And one third question from there.
Thank you. Robert Brown, the Macquarie Society. A quick observation and then a question. I don't think that the power of regenerative agriculture is understood. Put Bayer Regenerative Agriculture and press the news tab. Bayer are now committed to biological solutions, and that says something very fundamental. In terms of accelerating regenerative agriculture, if you give plants seeds the biology they need, the mycorrhiza and the bacteria, through compost and other extracts, you accelerate and jumpstart the regenerative process. Life produces water when you give it carbon. That applies to life under the soil as well. So if you have plants photosynthesizing and producing carbon and giving it to the life under the soil, they will produce water even in drought, giving you drought resistance. And if you use nitrates and phosphates, they are the exchange mechanism between photosynthetic carbon sugar oxidates produced by plants and nitrates and minerals, nitrates produced by bacteria and minerals mined by the plants. And when you do that, you reduce the production of carbon sugar exudate. There are people who are doing this out there. How do we get their knowledge out into this wider forum? Because these are really fundamental factors that makes regenerative agriculture accessible, at least at the base level, to a wide range of smallholders. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Petra, there was one question specifically for you.
I'm glad to see there's great engagement on regenerative agriculture and biologicals. Let me try to share a few thoughts. So one is, can we really replace crop protection through biological and nature mechanisms? And I think we are making really good progress on the side of the biostimulants, understanding how we can protect crops against abiotic stress. The question about biocontrol, we have isolated solutions against a few diseases. We are still away from broad mechanisms. And so we are at the same time trying to improve our chemical crop protection. We are developing a seed treatment against fungi disease, which is so specific that in soil it only attacks the fungus, that is the harmful one, which means the other fungi in the microbiome that actually help the crop thrive can grow even better. And we try to measure and figure out how this symbiosis works, because it then helps the plant to grow faster, have bigger roots, pick up more nutrients through the root system, and so then be a more productive plant and, like you say, bring again carbon into the soil. So these are the mechanisms we try to foster, both with biological biocontrol as well with new chemical molecules. I apologize, I didn't fully grasp your question, which was about taking back from Syngenta, but I really couldn't hear. I can volunteer, either you understood it
you
or
can take it offline. You can
we take it offline, you know. And the last, maybe on the question on regenerative agriculture, a lot of the discussions here has been how do we help farmers move and change their practices, because farmers, we have all heard it, need to feed their families, secure their harvest, and it's hard to have them take a risk. So by both technology that de-risks regen ag as well as decision-making tools, we try to recruit farmers. And one example which we are having is a project in the Brazil Cerrado, where we restore soil degraded land through regenerative practices, and we have the whole ecosystem being set up. We have a bank, we have Embrapa, we have TNC as a NGO partner to give us advice, and we are very proud. We have above 100,000 hectares already in the restoration program.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other panelists want to react? Yeah?
Thank you. I'll address the supply chain question and then just touch on the regenerative agriculture. Your question was, do other players in the supply chain need to be involved? My answer is absolutely yes. When we see what's coming down the line in terms of climate-related finance reporting and other reporting that the corporates will need to do in the agricultural supply chain, the most impact that's going to come from emissions will be from farmers, which will be their scope 3. So it is really important that they're engaged all the way through the supply chain. And I'm a farmer myself, so I then say, what's the value proposition that is going to come to allow me to actually gather the data and provide it back to those corporates? So there needs to be a mature conversation about who's going to pay for this, because in the end, every survey we see says the consumer is not actually going to come through and pay more for this, certainly not at the moment. In response to the regenerative agriculture question, a very short answer, and that would be we need to tell our story outside of the converted. So we need to go beyond our audiences in agriculture and be able to get to those in mainstream so they hear what we're doing, because they are the ones that will make the difference in terms of practice change and influence.
Great, thank you. Richard, do you want to add something, and I'll come to you?
Yeah, just very briefly on that. And I think your question was, how do we get the good practice out there? Innovation spans multiple different things, including practice innovation. And Will, your example of, there's no innovation in growing beans, there's no innovation in coppicing coffee trees, but there's real innovation in growing beans with coffee trees. And it's the same with regen. There's some amazing projects here. I'm not going to just kind of share the light, but go to the food pavilion, get in COP, go and talk to people. But that transition of innovation from one place to another itself is an innovative process. We don't know how to do it, so we as a innovation agency are working on how do you create better learning communities? How do you take something from India and make it work in France? That's a big challenge, but there's no reason it can't be solvable.
Great, thank you. We might have another round for questions, but Will?
Just a quick addition. In terms of the supply chain, it is very local and very specific and very different context to context. This is one of the challenges. So you have to have people working with the farmers and close to the farmers. To the broader supply chain question, I would just say TechnoServe is a not-for-profit organization, but we're privileged to work with a lot of great food companies, many years with Syngenta, with Unilever, with Cargill, with Nestle, and business has moved on. It is not about if, it's all about how now. And they've committed publicly to their climate targets, which they cannot meet. They can't come close to meeting unless they revamp their agricultural supply chains. So there's investment coming in, there's a great focus on this, and there are reasons to be optimistic.
Great, thank you. Jamie, would you like to add something? No? Okay. Any other points? Okay, I can see more hands here. Where is the mic? Could I have the mic, please? In the front here, starting with the front, please, here, yeah. So if you can be brief, I can take more speakers, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Islam. I'm a nutritionist, and I'm working with communities in London. I was wondering, you mentioning the relevance of optimization of resources like water. There is no good agriculture if water is at risk. But we are facing scarcity in land because of the increased sea levels of the water. What is the role of a city, according to your knowledge, in this game? Okay. How a city can be both a center where the information can be passed within the different communities living in the city, which then can take this baggage back home?
That's very clear. Thank you. Is the next question there? There. Thank you.
Paul from Bloomberg NEF. We're a research firm looking at decarbonization, traditionally not working in agriculture. The issue seems to be that, we haven't really seen a pathway to scale, primarily limited by the unwillingness of the folks downstream to kind of pay at a large scale for this. Do you see any ways in which this resolves itself? I don't expect a company to give up margin.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
It's working, yes. I'm Sven Kaufmann. I'm from a company called Sustainable Planet. We are growing plant-based protein on non-agricultural land. And we are very active in Mozambique right now. And we are bootstrapping everything. We are including smallholder farmers. We love what we do, but the problem is always the funding, especially for these areas in Africa. So my question to all of you is, how do we get more funding into innovative solutions in Africa where normally investors are not investing? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Person next to you.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Yosan Fazri. I'm from Ecofinance. So I'm managing the climate fund, supporting more than 500 farmers across the globe. My question is basically as captive finance to support sustainable finance, who have trouble on, providing green premium for the farmers. So one of the biggest challenge for us is basically our scope 3, because we are manufacturing tractors. It's in the biofuels or HVO, right? So how you see from the government standpoint to support this, and also from the industry. And the second one is basically regarding precision agriculture. I think this is the technologies that could help us to decarbonize the agriculture practices, but none of the government bodies already recognize this as a levers for.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Let me take the lady behind you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Renuka Thakur from Global Sustainable Futures Network. I want to say that unless we don't measure the change, we cannot pursue anyone or motivate anyone to do the change. So why we have not up till now made carbon calculators available to each and every farmers or the communities so that they can measure and change. So here, thank you.
Thank you. One last question or comment. Is one there? That's the last one at the end there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ram. I'm trying to understand what exactly do we mean by regenerative, because my understanding is that you don't use any fertilizers or pesticides. But I'm also trying to understand, because I see, if suppose a company, let's say Syngenta, right? If you don't end up, how would the business, how would it impact the business if suppose you do regenerative, you don't use any external inputs and you're trying to become more self-sufficient. So curious to understand how that would apply.
Okay, thank you. I don't expect you to be answering, but just take some of them, and some of them can be taken offline because we only have 5 minutes. So any quick reactions to some of the questions, Jamie?
I didn't hear all of the questions in full.
Pick anyone.
But I think the measurement of change with respect to carbon is a really interesting one. I think the issue in our sector in particular is that it's mostly led by private companies, and companies are very unwilling to share data. It's very closed book. So I think that there's a call now for companies to be a lot more open, for there to be the publishing of research in peer-reviewed journals, and that's something that certainly we're starting to do at Vertical Future, because obviously there's been a lot of talk about depending on where you get your energy from and so on, it can be a very, very carbon intensive issue or undertaking. So yeah, we are definitely seeing some changes there, but it's not across the board.
Great, thank you. Yeah?
Can I just respond to the excellent question about how to stimulate investment in the ag sector, particularly with smallholders and the difficulties there? The premise behind your question is absolutely correct. And there's a couple of exciting developments, I think, that are pointing us in positive directions about that question. The first is technical assistance facilities working alongside investment funds in the ag sector in Africa, helping to de-risk the investments, helping to support the investee companies, which are often amalgamations of smallholder farmers coming together to form farmer business organizations. So there's a growing track record of de-risking and changing the equation for investors through technical assistance supporting investment funds. The other key thing is about data, and it's a data poor environment. We have been working on developing remote sensing technology, which is very advanced for commercial farms, but very unadvanced for smallholder farms. And using machine learning, we've worked with researchers from University of Minnesota, Carnegie Mellon Africa, and others with funding from the US Department of Agriculture to develop an algorithm which is more than 85% effective now at seeing smallholder cashew farms from outer space. That helps you target ag extension. It helps you target nurseries. And very importantly, there's a new law that's been promulgated in the EU that forbids importation of agricultural commodities coming from deforested land. This is a huge risk to smallholder farmers who generally don't have the ability to respond to that. We've worked with the European Space Agency program to develop an app which can very quickly answer that question and can provide a way for smallholders. It's a freely available app and provide a way for smallholders to access that market. So again, there's green shoots there, if you will.
Great, thank you. So briefly,
I see
please.
time is running, and we seem to be massively aligned here, that if we want to unlock financing, we need to develop the carbon markets to be more predictable, to be accessible to smallholders, because if there's money coming, then it's from the need from the consumer-faced companies to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, and this is something we are working towards. And the two major elements that are missing next to the typical carbon sequestration is how do we include actually the value of productivity in the carbon calculation, and how do we include the value of avoided emissions? So can we judge by technologies approaches also not only by sequestration but by avoiding emissions? And if we move in this direction, we hopefully get more money invested.
Great, thank you. Well, one of the main thing obviously that we're trying to tackle is hunger around the world. You know, there are almost 800 million people who go hungry every day. And it's important to be aware of the drivers to this hunger, what is causing this hunger to increase. And it's still extremely disappointing that in the 21st century we still have people who go hungry every day, and yet we're producing enough food to feed everyone. So we've got a slide though here, a question, and you can scan that link there just to get your views on what you think, and you can see the question here hopefully coming up. You know, the increase of hunger around the world is driven by which of these factors you can see there. So just to get your opinion and see how much are we aware of what is causing hunger to go up around the world, unfortunately. So let's see, we've got climate change and economic factors, conflict, and also health issues, particularly COVID-19. So which ones you think are causing hunger to go around, to increase around the world? Economic factors, climate change, conflicts. Interesting. So I'll give you a few more seconds because we need to finish in 1 minute. And I think I'll leave this as food for thought for everyone, and then we'll close it here. That's interesting, nobody voted for COVID-19. Since 2019, when COVID started, we now have 122 million people who were pushed into hunger because of COVID-19 just by itself. So it's interesting that nobody voted for that. It's 0%. That's not true. Basically, all of these are drivers to hunger around the world, including the COVID-19. So I'll leave this as food for thought, and it's good that we had all speakers who gave their perspectives, and thank you for that, and the audience as well. It was nice to see you also contributing. So please join me in thanking every panelist here. Thank you.